Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Everybody down now. The shout ripped through the dining room and slammed into every spine at once. A chandelier shivered. A violinist's bow froze mid-stroke. Crystal glasses stopped halfway to lips. In a restaurant perched high above the city, white tablecloths, soft gold lighting, skyline stretched wide behind floor-to-ceiling glass, panic didn't arrive as screaming. It arrived as silence. 5 men in black masks surged through the entrance in a tight, disciplined formation. Not drunk. Not reckless. They moved like they'd rehearsed the room, eyes tracking exits, corners, camera angles. One stayed near the door. 2 split left. 1 drifted right toward the bar. The last one walked straight down the center aisle, steady as a metronome. On the far side, beside the windows, a man rose slowly from his chair. June Park. 39. Black suit tailored to the millimeter. A tattoo curled up the side of his neck like a signature. He didn't flinch. He didn't reach for a weapon. He simply stood, calm in a way that didn't feel brave, but familiar. At the center aisle, a waitress stepped into view with a silver tray lifted in one hand. Nia Carter. 34. Dark skin warm under the lights. Hair pulled into a neat bun. Crisp white shirt. Black apron. The uniform said service, but her posture said discipline, shoulders set, weight balanced, eyes doing quiet math. A splash of deep red stained the front of her shirt from an earlier accident, a glass of wine knocked over at the wrong time. In this light, it looked like something worse. Most people saw a waitress caught in the wrong place. June Park watched her like he'd just noticed the only person in the room who wasn't afraid. The lead masked man raised his arm, aiming past the tables toward June. His voice came out muffled, hard. "You're coming with us." A woman near the aisle whimpered. A man in a designer watch lifted his phone to record, hands shaking but determined, because some people don't know what to do with fear except document it. Nia didn't look at the phone. She didn't look at the screaming guests. She looked up briefly toward the discreet black domes in the ceiling corners and the small sensor above the entrance. Then her gaze dropped to the service station behind her, where a brass panel sat flush in the wood like it belonged there. She leaned her head slightly, as if listening to a voice only she could hear. Then she spoke into the collar of her shirt, quiet enough that no one at the nearest table caught the words. ONYX. It wasn't dramatic. It was procedural. A soft, quick sequence followed, barely audible, but unmistakable, magnetic locks engaging. The front door sealed. The side exit by the bar clicked shut. The ambient music cut off mid-note. The lighting shifted brighter, not strobing, not flashy, just enough to strip away the shadows the masked men were counting on. The lead attacker hesitated, realizing the room had stopped being a stage and started being a trap. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Nia Carter. The man nearest Nia lunged, instinct first, plan second, arm swinging toward her like she was an obstacle, not a person. Nia moved once. No wild punches. No spin kicks. She turned her body sideways and raised the tray, catching his forearm with metal on muscle, redirecting the strike away from the guests behind her. Her other hand snapped to his wrist, not to fight, but to control the angle. A small twist. A small step. His balance broke. His boots slid on the polished floor. He stumbled just enough. That was all the room needed. Because the restaurant's security was already inside. Two servers in black vests moved in with professional speed, not chaos. A host who had been standing too still all night closed the distance like a door. In 3 coordinated motions, they pinned the attacker's arm, forced him down, and stripped the weapon from his grip. Another masked man tried to pivot toward the bar exit only to find it locked. A third turned back toward the front doors, locked. The fourth raised his weapon, scanning for a new plan only to freeze when a security guard stepped out from behind a column with a hand up, voice low and controlled. "Drop it. Now." The fifth, near the entrance, realized too late that the entire room had become a net. Under 10 seconds. That's what it took for 5 men who walked in like predators to end up on the ground, restrained, disarmed, and surrounded by witnesses who suddenly remembered how to breathe. Phones kept recording, but the angle changed. Fear had switched sides. From the kitchen corridor, the manager stormed out in a tailored blazer, face tight with fury that didn't match the moment. Vivian Cross. 44. Perfect hair. Perfect posture. A smile that was usually polite enough to be cruel. She pointed at Nia like the problem was standing in an apron. "What did you do?" Vivian snapped. "Who gave you permission to touch anyone in here?" Nia didn't answer her. She didn't even look at her. She looked straight at June Park. And for the first time, June's calm cracked, not into panic, but into curiosity sharp enough to cut. His voice dropped, steady and dangerous. "Who are you?" he asked. Outside the glass walls, the city glittered like it didn't care. But somewhere below, sirens began to rise fast, converging, inevitable. The restaurant didn't exhale when the masked men went down. It held its breath. 5 bodies lay pinned on marble and carpet, wrists cinched with ties pulled from the security team's belt kits, plain black straps that looked like nothing until they became certainty. The servers who weren't really servers kept their knees planted and their hands steady, eyes darting between the attackers and the guests, ready for a second wave that might never come, but could. Nia stood in the aisle with her tray lowered now, her shoulders still squared. The red stain on her shirt drew stares like a magnet. Wine, she knew. But in a room full of frightened strangers, perception was more powerful than truth. A man in a gray suit whispered, "That waitress just, what the hell was that?" Another voice, sharper, almost offended by the disruption, "How does a waitress know how to lock a place down?" Phones floated above tablecloths like periscopes. Someone laughed, not joy, not relief. A dry laugh. A masked man on the floor, breathing hard through fabric. "Boss," he rasped toward June, "you got new help?" June's eyes slid to him, cold as cut glass. "You're not speaking to me." The attacker's laughter died. Vivian Cross stepped forward as if volume could rebuild her authority. Her heels snapped against the floor with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in a room like this. "This is unacceptable," she barked. "My guests are terrified. The doors are locked. Who authorized a lockdown?" A security guard answered without looking at her. "Safety protocol." Vivian's head whipped around. "Safety protocol is not your decision. Your staff." She stabbed a finger at Nia. "And you, what are you even doing here? You touched someone. You interfered. You're a liability." Nia's face stayed calm. She kept her hands open, visible, no sudden movements, no ego. Calm didn't mean compliant. Calm meant controlled. Near the windows, a woman in a silk dress stood up, trembling. "We're trapped," she said. "Why are the doors locked?" "The doors are secured for your safety," the guard replied. Police are en route. Police, the woman repeated, as if the word itself was another threat. Vivian spun on the guard. No. Absolutely not. We handle things privately in this establishment. The guard's eyes didn't blink. Not tonight. That tiny refusal, 2 words, hit Vivian like a slap. Her gaze snapped back to Nia, hungry for a weaker target. I want her name, Vivian demanded. I want her off this floor. She's Vivian's eyes flicked to the stain on Nia's shirt, and her tone shifted into something uglier, something old. She looks like she started it. A few guests nodded instinctively, relieved to have someone to blame. Fear loved a simple story. Nia watched it happen in real time, the room trying to rewrite the last 10 seconds into something more comfortable. Something where a black woman couldn't be the reason they were alive. June's jaw tightened. For a moment, it looked like he might speak. Instead, he stayed silent, because silence was his power, too. Nia's gaze shifted, measured, toward the entrance. She didn't need a clock to know time. Sirens took minutes to reach a tower like this, then more minutes to clear security downstairs and ride the elevator up. Minutes were an eternity when adrenaline was still in the air. She stepped toward the service station and lifted a slim hardwired phone tucked beneath the counter, old school, reliable, impossible to jam. She spoke softly into it, voice steady. Unit lead, she said. A response came immediately. Go. Confirm perimeter, Nia said. Stairwell, elevator bank, roof access. Copy. Roof is clear. Stairwell is posted. Elevators are locked at lobby and service level only. Nia's eyes flicked toward Vivian, who was still performing outrage like it could restore her status. And keep management away from the scene, Nia added. She's escalating the room. There was a pause. Understood. Vivian saw the phone in Nia's hand and took it personally. Are you calling someone? She snapped. You don't get to make calls. Give me that. Vivian reached out like she could snatch the handset away. A security guard stepped between them, fast, controlled, not aggressive. Just immovable. Ma'am, he said, step back. Vivian's eyes widened. Do you know who I am? The guard's expression didn't change. Not relevant. A ripple moved through the dining room. Some guests looked offended on Vivian's behalf until they remembered the masks on the floor and the weapons that had nearly turned dinner into a headline. Nia set the handset down gently. Then she walked a few steps closer to June, stopping at a respectful distance. Not subservient. Not intimate. Professional. You weren't supposed to be here, June said, voice low. Nia's eyes held his without flinching. Neither were they. He studied her like a man who'd survived enough betrayal to recognize competence as a new kind of danger. You called it ONYX, he said. That code doesn't belong to a restaurant. Nia's voice stayed even. It belongs to a building that doesn't tolerate surprises. June's eyes narrowed, taking in the ceiling cameras, the guards, the quick coordination that didn't look improvised. Then you're not just staff. No, Nia agreed. Before he could press, the elevator chime rang in the hall beyond the dining room. Everyone turned. The doors opened. 2 uniformed officers stepped out, followed by a building security supervisor with a badge lanyard and a face that said he'd been sprinting. Police, one officer called. Hands where we can see them. The room erupted into overlapping voices, guests shouting, security giving quick instructions, Vivian pushing forward like she owned the law. Officer! Vivian cried. Finally! Arrest her, she pointed at Nia with manic certainty. She assaulted someone. She locked us in. She's not even supposed to be. The officer's gaze swept the scene, masked men on the floor, weapons secured, private security holding positions, terrified diners clutching wine glasses like lifelines. Then his eyes landed on Nia, upright, calm, hands open at her sides. "What happened?" the officer demanded. Vivian sucked in a breath, ready to control the narrative. But the lead attacker lifted his head just enough to speak through the mask. "Ask her," he croaked, eyes locked on Nia. "Ask her who she really is." The room went thin and electric, as if the truth had just stepped out of the elevator with the police. The officers moved with cautious efficiency, stepping around tables and shattered glass, eyes tracking hands, weapons, exits. One officer knelt, checked a restraint, and glanced at the private security team. "Who are you?" he asked a guard. "Building response," the guard said. "Contracted." "By who?" the officer pressed. The guard hesitated, just a fraction, then glanced toward Nia as if awaiting clearance. Vivian noticed. Her face tightened. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "This is my venue. I didn't authorize any response. I want names. I want—" "Ma'am," an officer interrupted, firm, "step back behind the line." Vivian blinked like she'd been slapped. "Behind the line?" "Yes," the officer repeated, holding up a hand, not on her, but in front of her. "Now." Vivian stepped back, breathing hard. The room watched her lose a little control, because people always did. They watched the powerful wobble because it made them feel less small. Nia remained still while officers began securing the scene. She answered questions when asked, clear, minimal, precise. "How many suspects?" 5. "Any shots fired?" "No." "Any injuries?" "None confirmed. One guest fainted. Staff is shaken." Her voice never rose. Her tone never begged to be believed. June watched that, too. He leaned closer, his voice barely audible. "You talk like you've done this before." Nia's eyes didn't flicker. "I plan like I've done this before." A paramedic entered and moved toward a trembling couple near the windows. The woman's lipstick was smeared from crying. The man kept patting his pockets like he'd lost something more valuable than pride. Vivian gathered a small cluster of guests around her, people who looked expensive, people who needed to feel aligned with power even while everything fell apart. "This will be handled," Vivian insisted loudly. "This is an unfortunate incident, but our reputation—" "Our reputation," a guest snapped. "I almost died." Vivian's smile twitched. "Let's not be dramatic." The guest stared at her like she'd just spoken a foreign language. An officer approached Nia again. His gaze flicked from her uniform to her composure. "Ma'am, we're going to need identification." Vivian's eyes lit up, finally sensing a place to win. "Yes," she said quickly. "Exactly. She's not on staff. She's impersonating." Nia reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a slim card holder. She handed over a credential. The officer looked down. "Not a driver's license. A corporate ID with security clearance markings." His brow furrowed. "This is corporate." "It's valid," Nia said. Vivian's confidence wavered. "Corporate of what?" she demanded, stepping forward until an officer's arm stopped her again. Nia didn't answer Vivian. She tilted her head slightly as her earpiece buzzed with a soft tone no one else noticed. "Elena," Nia murmured. A woman's voice came through, crisp, controlled. "Board is live," Elena Brooks said. "Legal is on. Risk is on. Media monitoring is on. And building council is standing by." The officer heard enough to stiffen. Board, he repeated. Ma'am, what board? June's gaze sharpened. You're not a waitress, he said, more certain now. Nia didn't deny it. She didn't confirm it for the room either. She kept her attention on the facts, because facts were safer than theatrics. The suspects targeted Mr. Park, she said to the officer. They attempted to remove him from the premises by force. The officer nodded, processing. We're notifying federal partners, he said. Possible organized abduction. Vivian tried to laugh, thin and brittle. This is insane. We're a restaurant. We don't. The guard nearest her glanced down at his earpiece and said, almost casually, Ma'am, your access to the office has been temporarily suspended while we stabilize the scene. Vivian froze. What? Your keys won't work, he clarified. Badge won't work. Safety measure. Vivian spun toward Nia like a compass snapping to true north. Did you do that? Nia didn't blink. Not personally. Vivian's voice rose. Then who has the authority to? Elena's voice returned in Nia's ear, quiet and sharp. Counsel is asking if you want to proceed with administrative suspension for cause. Nia's gaze hardened, not angry, not vengeful. Just resolved. Proceed, she said. The officer stared at her. Ma'am, he said slowly, I'm going to need you to explain why you have the ability to initiate building protocols in real time. Nia turned her head slightly, and for the first time, she looked at Vivian directly. Not with hatred. With clarity. My title isn't the point, she said. But your behavior is. Vivian's face drained of color like someone had pulled a plug. And the room finally, truly, began to understand this wasn't about a waitress having a heroic moment. This was about a system being exposed in public. 2 hours earlier, Nia Carter had walked into the tower lobby wearing a plain black coat and no visible jewelry. Nothing that announced wealth. Nothing that begged for respect. She moved like she belonged anywhere, which was exactly why people assumed she belonged nowhere important. In the elevator, a young couple in designer clothes glanced at her and then away, polite avoidance, the kind that pretended not to see class and color while still reacting to it. Nia didn't mind. She collected data from it. At the host stand upstairs, Vivian Cross did the same. Vivian's gaze swept Nia from shoes to collar, pausing at the absence of a purse that cost a month's rent. Reservation? Vivian asked, tone smooth, eyes sharp. Nia replied. Table for one. Vivian tapped a screen. Her smile returned, thin. I don't see that name. Nia didn't argue. She leaned in slightly, showing a confirmation email. Vivian barely looked. Our VIP seating is limited, she said, stressing the word like it was law. Maybe you'd be more comfortable at the bar. Nia's eyes slid to the bar, crowded, loud, visible. A place where she would be watched, judged, and contained. I'm fine here, Nia said. Vivian's smile sharpened. Are you? It wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It was the familiar, quiet push that told someone exactly where the world thought they belonged. Nia could have ended it with a name. A title. A bank account. But she didn't come for comfort. She came for truth. Because tonight wasn't about dinner. Tonight was about a decision. A $1.8 billion modernization program, security, access control, vendor governance rolling across a portfolio of hospitality and mixed-use properties. Carter Strategic Holdings was the controlling asset manager overseeing that portfolio, responsible for selecting and policing the vendors that kept people safe. And Nia, quiet, unannounced, was doing what she always did before signing anything that touched human lives. She went where the system was most honest. The service corridors. The back doors. The places where the world's polish ended and its habits began. Elena had arranged a legitimate shadow shift through building operations, nothing illegal, nothing theatrical. The kitchen manager was exhausted and understaffed. When Nia asked to observe Flow 4 operational review, he shrugged and handed her an apron. And just like that, the CEO became invisible. Invisible people saw everything. Nia watched the security guard at the service elevator take calls he wasn't supposed to take. She watched a vendor slip through without proper check-in. She watched Vivian accept a sealed envelope from a man who didn't eat but smiled too often. Then she saw June Park arrive, quiet, controlled, surrounded by men who didn't look like bodyguards but moved like them. The kind of man wealthy people treated with careful respect even if they didn't know why. Nia recognized that type. A person who didn't threaten with volume. A person who threatened with inevitability. She also recognized what was wrong. A camera in the west corner lagged by half a second. Not a glitch, an opening. That's when Elena's message came in, a single line on Nia's phone while she stood over the service station. Target confirmed. Heightened risk tonight. Nia didn't panic. Panic was for people without options. She looked at the restaurant's layout, the exits, the blind spots, the staff who were actually staff and didn't know they were working inside a trap. Then she made a quiet decision: if violence came, it would hit a wall of preparation, not a room full of screaming strangers. She initiated a heightened security posture through building operations, extra guards already in the space, doors ready to secure, law enforcement notified through the tower's direct channel, logs set to preserve automatically. And when the 5 masked men finally rushed in, shouting orders and aiming toward June Park, the restaurant didn't become a battlefield. It became evidence. Back in the present, Vivian stared at Nia as if trying to stitch those two timelines together: waitress and authority, apron and power. Nia's eyes didn't change. Because she wasn't here to prove she was important. She was here to prove who was dangerous. Vivian tried one last time to reclaim the room with volume. "This is my establishment," she insisted, voice shaking with anger and fear. "This is my staff. And I want her removed. Immediately." An officer turned toward Vivian, eyes tired. "Ma'am, you need to calm down." Vivian's laugh came out sharp. "Calm down? We were held hostage." "You weren't held hostage," a guest snapped from behind her. "You were held accountable." Vivian spun. "Excuse me?" The guest didn't back down. "They came for him," she said, pointing toward June. "And that woman stopped it while you stood there yelling about permission." Vivian's face flushed. Her gaze snapped back to Nia with fury that needed a target. Nia didn't give her one. She took a single step toward the officer who'd asked for identification. "Officer," Nia said evenly, "you'll have my full cooperation. My counsel will provide system logs, camera feeds, and access control records." The officer blinked. "Your counsel?" "Yes." Vivian cut in, desperate. "She doesn't have counsel. She's a waitress." Nia turned her head slightly. "No," she said, calm as a closed door. "I'm not." Silence hit the dining room in a clean wave. Vivian scoffed, but it sounded brittle now. "Then what are you?" Nia pulled out her phone, tapped once, and held it up, not for Vivian, but for the officer. A secure video call grid filled the screen. Names in small boxes. Suits. Headsets. A legal team. Operations. Risk. Elena Brooks framed by glass office walls, posture tight, eyes sharp. The officer's posture changed. He didn't bow. He didn't soften. but he recognized seriousness. "Ma'am," he said, voice lowering, "what is this?" "A board call," Nia replied. Vivian's breath caught. "Board." Elena leaned into her camera. "Officer," she said, crisp and professional, "I'm Elena Brooks, Chief Operating Officer of Carter Strategic Holdings. We're recording this call for compliance and evidence preservation. Ms. Carter is safe, correct?" The officer looked at Nia, then back at the screen. "Safe," he confirmed, still processing. Vivian's eyes widened, darting between Nia's uniform and Elena's title like her brain refused to accept what her ears heard. "Carter Holdings?" Vivian repeated, voice thinning. Nia's gaze held Vivian steady. "Yes." Vivian tried to rally. "That doesn't mean anything. You can't just..." Elena's voice sharpened. "It does mean something," she said. "Because Carter Strategic Holdings is the controlling asset manager for this tower. We oversee operations and vendor governance for safety-critical systems." The officer frowned. "You oversee the tower?" Nia didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply spoke, clear and unadorned. "My company does," she said. "And tonight, I was here evaluating the property's operational integrity." Vivian's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her confidence, built on doors she could control and people she could belittle, began to collapse under the weight of a reality she couldn't talk her way out of. June watched Nia with a new kind of attention, less suspicion, more respect. "So that's why the locks answered you," he murmured. Nia's reply came without heat. "Locks answer stewardship," she said. "And stewardship answers liability." Vivian's voice finally returned, high and strained. "You set me up." Nia's eyes didn't harden with anger. They softened with something colder than anger, principle. "No," Nia said. "I let you be yourself." The room stayed silent. Because everyone understood what that meant. Vivian's behavior hadn't been a mistake. It had been a pattern. And patterns were what contracts were made of, proof repeated until consequences became inevitable. Elena spoke again, controlled but decisive. "Miss Cross," she said, effective immediately, "you are placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Your access has been suspended for safety. HR and legal will contact you." Vivian's knees looked like they might give. She grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself, eyes wide, scanning the room for an ally, anyone, only to find guests staring at her like she was the embarrassment now. The officer cleared his throat, forcing himself back into procedure. "Miss Carter," he said carefully, "we'll need those logs and footage. And we'll need statements from everyone involved." "You'll have them," Nia replied. June leaned closer, voice low enough to keep the room from hearing. "They didn't come to rob me," he said. "They came to take something." Nia's gaze sharpened. "What?" June's eyes flicked toward the pinned men, then back to Nia. "A ledger," he said. "And if they were willing to storm a room like this for it, then someone powerful is afraid of what's inside." Nia's phone buzzed in her hand. A message from Elena appeared. "We found the shell company. It's connected to a vendor on our shortlist." Nia's expression didn't change, but the meaning landed like a stone. Because now the attack wasn't only about June Park. It was about the building. About the modernization program. About who wanted Carter Strategic Holdings off balance, publicly, violently, permanently. The restaurant stopped feeling like a crime scene and started feeling like a courtroom without benches. Police tape went up at the entrance. Officers guided guests into clusters for statements. The 5 masked men were moved one by one, searched, photographed, and bagged gloves, ties, weapons, a burner phone that wouldn't stop vibrating like it was still receiving orders. Nia didn't move like someone basking in victory. She moved like someone closing windows before a storm. In a small private dining room off the main floor, an officer placed a notebook on the table. Another sealed body cam evidence. A third stood near the door, watching the hall like the attack might repeat itself with a different face. Across from them, Nia sat with her back straight, apron still tied, stain still visible, and insult the room had tried to turn into a crime. Elena appeared on the phone, framed by glass walls and fluorescent calm. Beside her, two attorneys joined the call, one in-house, one outside counsel. Their voices were quiet, clipped, built for documentation. "Officer," Elena said, "we're prepared to provide access logs for all doors and elevators from 6 p.m. through now. We're issuing preservation notices to all building vendors immediately." The lead officer blinked. "Preservation notices?" "Yes," the attorney added, "to prevent deletion of footage or tampering with records. You'll receive it within minutes." In the hallway, Vivian could still be heard arguing with a guard. "You can't suspend me," she snapped. "I run this place." The guard's reply stayed steady. "Not during an active incident." Nia didn't look up. She didn't need to watch Vivian fall. She needed to make sure Vivian couldn't pull anyone else down with her. June entered the private room without asking permission. Two officers tensed, but he raised his hand slightly, palms open. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said. His eyes went to Nia. "I'm here because this isn't finished." He placed a slim metal case on the table and slid it toward her. "Not dramatic. Just decisive." Nia didn't touch it yet. "What is that?" "A ledger," June said. "Names. Payments. Shell companies. The kind of proof that gets men masked up and desperate." The officer's posture shifted. "Sir, if that contains evidence." "It does," June interrupted. Then he looked back at Nia, voice lower. "They weren't hired to kill me. Killing is noisy. They were hired to take that." Nia's gaze stayed level. "Why bring it to me?" "Because you locked a room down in under 10 seconds, June said. "And because someone inside this building's vendor chain made that possible." Elena's eyes narrowed on screen. "We traced the vendor who tampered with the camera lag," she confirmed. "Their upstream ownership ties to Northgate Risk Solutions." Northgate. A flagship bidder on Carter's vendor shortlist. Nia's voice stayed calm. "Say it plainly." Elena did. "A vendor on our shortlist appears linked to the entities funding the security compromise. This may be an attempt to influence or sabotage the modernization program." The officer exhaled slowly. "That's a serious allegation." "It's a serious night," Nia replied. She opened the metal case. Inside was a thumb drive, clean, unmarked, designed to vanish. She didn't plug it in. She didn't need to. Possession alone changed the room. Nia turned to counsel. "Draft immediate safety actions," she said. The attorney nodded, already typing. Nia listed them like instruments, calm and exact. "Suspend the current security vendor pending audit. Effective immediately." A pause as the officer processed that she could do it. "Revoke credentials for every subcontractor tied to their service badges," Nia continued. "Issue a temporary trespass order for anyone associated with the compromised chain until vetting clears." Elena's eyes flicked across her screens. "Credential revocation can be live within the hour," she said. "We'll coordinate with building ops." "Reassign coverage tonight to a vetted response team," Nia added. "Double posts at stairwells. Single point of entry for service access. Preserve all logs automatically." The officer raised a hand. "Ms. Carter, this is still an active investigation. You can't interfere." I'm not interfering, Nia said softly. I'm preventing a second incident. That sentence landed differently than anger. It landed like responsibility. A federal liaison stepped into the doorway, suit jacket open, badge visible. He nodded to the officers, then to Nia. Miss Carter, he said, we'd like to secure the drive properly. You'll secure a verified copy, Nia said. My counsel will retain the original under documented chain of custody. You'll get full access through legal protocol. The liaison hesitated. That's not standard. Neither is storming a restaurant to abduct someone, Nia replied. We're adapting. June watched from the corner. If you hand it over loosely, he warned, someone will try to bury it. Nia met his gaze. Then we won't let them. Elena's voice returned in Nia's ear, quiet and urgent. Northgate's CEO is already calling, she said. He wants to check on your safety. Nia's jaw tightened once. Put him on speaker, she said. And when the call connected, a man's voice filled the room, smooth, concerned, perfectly rehearsed. Nia, he said warmly, I heard there was an incident. I just wanted to make sure you're all right. Nia's reply didn't carry anger. It carried finality. I'm fine, she said. But your status on our shortlist is not. Silence. Then a forced chuckle. Let's not jump to conclusions. This is a stressful night. Nia's voice stayed quiet. We don't jump, she said. We audit. The call ended with the sound of a man realizing his charm had met a wall. By morning, the story had escaped the tower and spread like fire through dry grass. 5 masked men. A luxury restaurant. A Korean mob boss. A black waitress who stayed calm while everyone else shattered. Clips hit every platform, cut into different narratives depending on who posted them. Some people tried to make it a joke, slow-motion edits, captions, cheap humor. Others called it what it was, a moment where the room's prejudice showed its teeth before the truth shut it down. And the truth had a name now. Nia Carter. Not the waitress. Not the hero. Not the staff member who got lucky. CEO. The video that exploded the most wasn't the takedown. It was Vivian Cross pointing at Nia and telling police to arrest her. Arrest her, she locked us in. The comments weren't gentle. Because people recognized that tone. That reflex. That instinct to criminalize the person who saved you when that person doesn't look like your idea of authority. News outlets began calling by noon. First local. Then national. Then international. A morning show ran, Black CEO in disguise stops attack in seconds. A business channel ran, vendor shortlist under scrutiny after violent incident. And in between those two headlines lived the whole story, dignity and money, bias and power, violence and paperwork. At Carter Strategic Holdings, Elena set up a war room. Screens showed incident timelines, vendor ownership charts, building access logs, and a social sentiment tracker spiking so hard it looked like a heartbeat in crisis. Vivian's employment file is trending, an analyst said. Elena didn't blink. Monitor. Don't engage. We don't argue online. We document. A second analyst glanced up. Northgate's stock is dipping. Elena's voice stayed even. It's going to dip harder. Northgate Risk Solutions issued a statement before lunch. We condemn violence. We have no connection to any criminal activity. It would have worked if the ledger didn't exist. Because the drive, once mirrored and secured, wasn't rumor. It was structure. Shell companies paying consulting services that matched the vendor who tampered with the tower's camera feed. Dates aligning with access anomalies. Amounts too clean to be random. Signatures that didn't belong to street criminals. Money fingerprints. Federal investigators made formal requests. Carter's counsel complied precisely, aggressively, with chain of custody documentation so tight it left no room for lost files or technical errors. In the middle of it, Vivian attempted a public apology outside the restaurant, flanked by a PR consultant and a trembling smile. "I regret my words," Vivian said. In the heat of the moment. But the internet didn't care about heat. It cared about pattern. A former employee posted, "Vivian did this for years." Another posted receipts, schedules, messages, complaints ignored. People didn't just watch Vivian fall. They recognized the system she'd been guarding. And when people recognize a system, they start asking who profits from it. June Park, now in protective custody under heavy supervision, made a request through his attorney. He wanted to speak to Nia privately. When they met, he looked less like a legend and more like a man who'd been holding a grenade too long. "I didn't bring you that ledger because I wanted justice," June admitted. "I brought it because I needed someone who could win." Nia held his gaze. "Those aren't always different," she said. June's voice dropped. "Northgate isn't the only name. There are people in there who sit on boards, who donate to campaigns, who smile on camera." Nia didn't react. She didn't gasp. She didn't perform shock. She nodded, as if confirming what she already knew about polished evil. "Then we don't fight like they do," she said. "How do you fight?" June asked. Nia's answer was quiet. "By making consequences unavoidable." That afternoon, Carter issued formal notices. The compromised security vendor was suspended pending audit, all related credentials were revoked as a safety measure, an independent review was initiated across the property's access governance. Northgate was removed from the shortlist pending investigation. And then Nia did something the public wasn't expecting. She scheduled a press conference. Not to brag. To redirect the story away from spectacle and into policy. The press conference wasn't held in a ballroom. It was held in the building's service corridor. Concrete walls. Fluorescent lights. The place people never photograph unless something has gone wrong. Nia stood behind a simple podium, Elena to her right, legal counsel to her left. Behind them, lined up in quiet rows, were the workers who kept the tower alive: dishwashers, servers, janitorial staff, building security. Adults with tired eyes. Adults who had learned that emergencies don't ask who's paid enough to survive them. Cameras flashed anyway. Reporters leaned forward, hungry for drama. Nia gave them none. "Last night," she began, voice steady, "violence entered a space where people believed violence could never reach them." She paused, letting it land. And in the same breath, bias showed itself. Not in a slogan. Not in a headline. In an instinct: who to blame, who to doubt, who to accuse. She didn't name Vivian. She didn't need to. The world already had the clip. Nia continued. "My title is not the point. The point is that no one's dignity should depend on their title." A reporter shouted, "Did you disguise yourself as a waitress to trap your employees into revealing prejudice?" Nia didn't blink. "I showed up," she replied. "People chose how to treat me." Another reporter, "Is it true a company tied to your vendor shortlist financed the attack?" Elena stepped forward. "There is an active federal investigation," she said. "We will not compromise it." Nia lifted a hand gently, reclaiming the mic. "But I will say this," she added. If any corporation believes it can purchase violence to influence contracts, it will discover that our company does not negotiate with intimidation. Then she pivoted away from punishment toward structure. Effective immediately, Nia said, Carter Strategic Holdings is launching the Dignity on Shift Fund. The corridor went quiet. It will provide legal support for service workers facing retaliation, she said. It will fund de-escalation and emergency readiness training. And it will offer scholarships for employees over 27 who want to transition into management, compliance, and operations. A ripple moved through the staff behind her disbelief, then something softer, hope cautious enough to be real. Nia wasn't done. We're also implementing a policy across all properties we oversee. No employee will be disciplined for initiating safety protocols in good faith. A reporter asked, because of last night? Because last night revealed what was already true, Nia said. People get punished for protecting others when the wrong person feels embarrassed. She looked into the cameras now, direct, unflinching. Embarrassment is not harm, she said. Violence is harm. Bias is harm. And we are done confusing them. After the conference, Nia didn't do the photo op circuit. She walked the line of workers quietly. To a server with shaking hands, you did well. To a dishwasher with red eyes, you matter. To a guard who'd pinned the first attacker, thank you. Elena caught up with her at the elevator bank. Northgate's CEO is upstairs, she said. He refused to leave. He says he wants to speak with you. Nia's expression didn't change. He doesn't get private, she said. They found him in a suite with his attorneys and his PR lead. His smile tried to behave like innocence. Nia, he began smoothly, we're all disturbed by what happened. I want to offer cooperation, Anne. Nia placed a folder on the table and slid it forward. Vendor invoices. Ownership charts. Timestamped access anomalies. A summary letter addressed to federal investigators. The man's smile held for 2 seconds too long. Elena spoke first. You are removed from consideration, she said. Effective immediately. The CEO's voice tightened. You can't prove. Nia cut in, not loud, just clean. You don't understand, she said. This isn't about what I can prove to you. It's about what you'll have to explain to them. He swallowed. What do you want? Nia's gaze stayed steady. I want every name you protected, she said. And I want you to understand something. She leaned forward slightly, not threatening, certain. You tried to buy fear, she said. I invest in consequence. The room went silent. Because everyone knew this wasn't negotiation. This was inevitability. The legal process didn't move like a movie. It moved like gravity. Slow at first, then impossible to stop. The 5 masked men took deals. Not because they became good men, but because evidence doesn't argue. Access logs don't forget. Footage doesn't care who your cousin is. And when federal investigators laid the ledger structure beside the tower's compromised camera feed, the story stopped being crazy restaurant incident. It became organized conspiracy. Vivian Cross filed a wrongful termination claim. It collapsed in discovery. Former employees testified. Internal emails surfaced. Complaints she dismissed appeared in tidy folders with timestamps. And the video, her pointing at Nia, trying to turn salvation into a crime, played in court without commentary. It didn't need commentary. Vivian lost her case, then lost her credibility, then lost the industry that had protected her for years. The last sight of her in public wasn't glamorous. It was her leaving a deposition with sunglasses too big and a posture too small. Northgate Risk Solutions didn't survive intact. Contracts paused. Partners distanced themselves. Shareholders demanded resignations. The CEO who had called to check on Nia's safety resigned in a statement that used the word family 3 times and the word accountability 0. June Park entered a federal relocation program under a different name. The public would never know where he went. But the violence that followed him like a shadow finally met something it couldn't threaten, a file stamped, sealed, and shared across agencies that didn't care about reputation. Before he disappeared, he asked for one last meeting with Nia. They met in a plain room with no skyline, no velvet, no luxury to hide behind. "I thought power was fear," June admitted. His eyes looked older than his age. "I thought the person who scares everyone wins." Nia studied him calmly. "Fear is a shortcut," she said. "It works until it doesn't." "And what works?" he asked. Nia didn't answer with poetry. She answered with the simplest truth. "Systems," she said. "And the courage to make them fair." Carter Strategic Holdings didn't win a contract from anyone. They did what stewards do: they finalized the modernization rollout, awarded vendor work under stricter oversight, and rebuilt the property's safety governance so a single compromised link couldn't endanger thousands of people. But that wasn't the ending Nia cared about. The ending she cared about lived in quieter places. In the tower's new protocols. In cameras upgraded and audited independently. In vendor vetting that didn't rely on charm. In a service corridor where a worker could press a button without fearing retaliation. And in the Dignity on Shift Fund, the first scholarship award went to a 31-year-old line cook who'd been told his whole life he wasn't management material. On award day, he stood shaking, holding the letter like it was fragile. Nia handed it to him personally. "You earned this," she said. He swallowed hard. "People don't usually say that to us." Nia's reply was quiet, but it carried the weight of the entire story. "Then people have been wrong," she said. Later, alone in her office, Nia watched the viral clip one last time, not the takedown, not the sirens, not the headlines. She watched the moment Vivian pointed at her. "Arrest her." Nia paused the frame and stared until the anger that could have grown there found nowhere to root. Because she hadn't won by shouting. She'd won by standing. By planning. By refusing to let dignity be a privilege reserved for the loudest voice in the room. Outside her window, the city kept glittering, indifferent as ever. But inside her buildings, inside her systems, something had shifted. And it wouldn't shift back. Character is currency. And dignity is non-negotiable.